Congressman, we're going to get out of that commercial break because we have word that the Supreme Court has issued a ruling on the extent of presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during the tenure of President Trump. This is the big one we've been waiting for. It's consequential. It's really interesting that the Supreme Court in 248 years of our history has never actually ruled on this. So it is big and sweeping. And I have our political panel looking over this right now. Andy McCarthy, Chief Justice John Roberts has the writing on this. He's got the pen. Is that significant?
It's very significant. It's the most important case of the term in terms of the long-term interests of the executive branch, in terms of the short-term interests of Donald Trump. And it looks like, at least within the bounds of clear executive authority, what Chief Justice Roberts is saying is that the president clearly has immunity from prosecution. So the question is going to be, again, I think Trey underscored this before, is what is an official act? There's going to be a lot of litigation about that, and what's close to the core of clear executive constitutional authority versus the outer ambit of it.
Brett?
Do we have Shannon? Is she going through the paperwork? Shannon, you there?
Yes. Yes, I am here, if you can hear me. Let me read you a little bit of what we have from the court. It does find this. Under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. He is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. There is no immunity for unofficial acts. That's the first blush we've got on this. It looks like a 6-3 split. We've got the dissent by Justice Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson join that. There is a kind of split decision on some of these. Somebody joins in one part, not in another part, but that's the overall holding of the court. So what it means now, we'll have to dig into this and see if they tell us now, how do you decide an official act versus an unofficial act? Because that's going to be critical, having now said the president does have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. We'll dig in, see how they define those official acts, and look for a little bit more from you from the opinion. But at first blush, this looks like it is going to be a win for the argument for presidential immunity when it comes to allegations of criminal activity.
What's interesting is that, you know, I'm sure if you're the Biden White House, you're paying close attention to this as well, because in the situation that we find ourselves in the utilization of the justices in politics. Let me go to you, Jonathan Turley, for a reaction to this decision so far.
Well, this is along the lines of what many of us anticipated, that the court did not go with absolute immunity on everything, but did say that there's absolute immunity when it comes to core constitutional powers. We're still going through the opinion to see if there's any assistance on where that line is to be drawn. This case is going to have to go back to the district court, which is going to have to try to sort of thread this needle to determine what in the case would not fall under these protections. But this is obviously a win for President Trump in the sense that the special counsel was arguing, as with the lower court, that there was very little immunity here to be concerned with. The counsel for the government was assuring the court that they really didn't have much to be concerned with here in terms of any changes in the status of the case. That's clearly not what won the day. The court here is saying that we do need lines here drawn to protect presidents so they have some breathing room. And you have to sort of wonder how the context affected the justices. I mean, if they want to look at the implications of leaving presidents without protection, they just need to look around the country. Even though Manhattan was not a federal case, it was a political prosecution in the view of many of us that was rather raw and open. And so this is a context that must have concentrated the minds of these justices as they did what Justice Gorsuch said and tried to write for the ages, to have something not for this case, but for future cases and future presidents.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, joins me now. Speaker Johnson, it's really a pleasure to have you. You just heard from President Biden, and he said the American people dissent, I dissent. What say you?
Kayleigh, what we're seeing tonight is despicable and it is dangerous. The president has been trying to undermine our legal system. First, they weaponized the Department of Justice to go after his chief political opponent, which of course is Donald Trump. And now, when it doesn't work the way they planned it, the way they designed it, when the law gets in the way of what they're trying to do, now he's trying to undermine the Supreme Court itself. It truly is an unprecedented moment in American history. And it's at a dangerous time. You know, President Biden showed the country that he is unfit to continue to serve in office. He does not have the capacity and the mental acuity to do it. And he's so desperate, now that everybody has seen that he's willing to turn on the system of justice itself. It's really a remarkable evening. Everything that we're watching is remarkable.
You know, Speaker Johnson, your Democratic counterpart, Hakeem Jeffries, had a really curious quote. He talked about the extreme far-right justices being brought into compliance. What does that mean?
I have no idea. Look, there's all sorts of hyperbole tonight and just this fantastical, these hypotheticals they've made up. Future presidents are going to turn into assassins and all the rest. It's madness. Listen, remember this. The president and the vice president are the only two offices in our constitutional system that are elected by all the people. No one who is elected to that office is going to be prone to this kind of crazy criminal activity. What the court is saying here follows common sense and, of course, our Constitution as well. You have to have the president with the ability to make difficult decisions hourly, daily, and not be worried about rogue prosecutors going after them at some point in the future. I mean, the president can't operate if he has that kind of sword of Damocles hanging over his head. And that's very simply what the court ruled today. It should have been 9-0. It was only 6-3. And the liberal justices are playing along with the charade. I really do think it's a scary thing for them to undermine the court itself.
Speaker Johnson, in the wake of the debate performance from President Biden Thursday, you made these comments on the Hill. Let's listen.
There's a lot of people asking about the 25th Amendment, invoking the 25th Amendment right now, because this is an alarming situation. As I mentioned, our adversaries see the weakness in this White House, as we all do. But, you know, unfortunately, it's not the House that gets to determine that. It's the cabinet under the Constitution, of course. It's the cabinet that makes that decision. I would ask the cabinet members to search their hearts. We hope that they will do their duty, as we all seek to do our duty, to do best by the American people. These are fateful moments.
Speaker Johnson, most of us haven't sat across from Joe Biden. You have sat across from the president. I'm curious if you've seen anything that's concerning, like what America saw on the debate stage.
I have, and I've tried to be judicious about this. I've not gone and done press conferences about private conversations because, frankly, Kayleigh, it's been very alarming to me. Now, some of these exchanges have been reported because other persons knew about our conversations, but I've been concerned about what our adversaries see. We need to make certain tonight one thing is clear. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, that they understand that the U.S. military is ready to act at any time. And regardless of the turmoil with regard to the president, America is strong. We will defend our interests, and you need not second guess that. But in the meantime, the reason we're talking about the 25th Amendment is because the fourth clause of the 25th Amendment has never been used. It is when the vice president and a majority of the cabinet members agree that the president is unfit and unable and incapable of continuing his duties. I think that's what we're watching here. Unless the president is reading off a teleprompter, I don't think he's capable of making these big decisions, and that is something that should alarm all of us, and it's something that we need to be talking about. I think people are privately murmuring about this, but I think desperate times call for desperate measures, and we may well be at that moment.
You know, final question, I just have a few moments. The House Judiciary Committee has sued in the district court today to get the Robert Hur tape. Of course, special counsel Robert Hur called Biden a well-meaning elderly man not fit to stand trial. Do you think you get that tape?
We need that tape desperately. That audio tape will confirm what all of us know. The reason they've been hiding it without any valid legal reason is because they didn't want us to see what we all saw on display last Thursday night at that debate. The cat is out of the bag now. We need that. The House needs it to continue our investigation, which is our constitutional responsibility. We're reviewing the decision of the special counsel, Robert Hur, who decided not to charge President Biden on the classified documents case because he was unfit, incapable of standing for trial because he's a feeble old man. I mean, effectively, that's what he said. We need to make sure the audio tape matches the transcript that they gave us. It's a very important responsibility we have. We're not going to let up, and we went to court to force that subpoena and make the Attorney General do his job.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Donald Trump's winning streak continues. The former president's July 11th sentencing now pushed back to September 18th in his New York hush money case. So as Judge Merchan weighs the possible impact of a new Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity, that's what happened there. Speaking of that decision, the liberal media has been giving some seriously dark predictions.
This is a death squad ruling. This is a ruling that says that as long as you can construe it as an official or quasi-official act, you can do absolutely anything, and never be held accountable, not only while you are president, but forever.
They've declared the president and former presidents to be kings, but they've also declared themselves the hand of the king.
People are exploring options to live in other countries if they think they could be targeted for prosecution by Donald Trump, because targeting you or targeting me or targeting Andrew would be an official act based on today's decision.
And Democratic Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, she might raise some eyebrows with the feds over what she said about the Supreme Court. Watch.
Theoretically, President Biden, acting within the scope of his official duties, could dispatch the military to take out the conservative justices on the court, and he'd be immune. Think so?
Way to lower the temperature in D.C., Greg.
Yeah, it's not like Biden needed to do this to create criminal cases for Trump. These dark predictions are a desperate pivot from their horrible reality. But again, they're always pivoting back to the same world that got them into this same disaster, which is Trump derangement fueled by these dystopian extremist fantasies. Like, once again, the world is going to end. People know that. But if you accept that explanation, then you end up having to pivot back into reality that you're stuck here with a dying president who isn't even really in office. It is ironic that the week Joe gets a cold, Trump gets complete immunity. You know, it should tell you something, that maybe you're going about it wrong, media and Democrats. Your foundation for operation is deeply flawed. These flights of dystopian fantasy reveal two problems. It's a drug to escape reality. Life sucks for you right now, but taking more of this fantasy pill might make you think it's going away, but it actually makes things worse. And as a filter to predict what happens in life, it doesn't work. Apocalyptic prisms never pan out. And what that does, it turns the voting base and your viewers into very cynical people. They learn not to trust you. They learn not to believe you. Meanwhile, what do they call us? Faux news, right? Who was right on all of this stuff, right? Maybe, I know Democrats and liberals watch The Five. They hate watch it. They love watch it. Who knows? Who was telling you the truth for so long? And who was lying to you? Who was gaslighting you? Them. Come on over. The water's warm. I'm wearing shorts.
And not just because he's
yes,
gotta go to the bathroom in the pool. Judge, I don't know if you saw this, but there's a left-wing group called Demand for Justice, and they get a lot of dark money. And they had that whole retire buyer campaign when they wanted him to get out of the Supreme Court. So they've just announced a $10 million campaign to attack the court and to try to discredit it. And yet then at the same time, they say, what are we going to do about the loss in faith of our institutions?
Yeah, well, I think the left can certainly take credit for the destruction of institutions in our country, whether it's education, not having kids go to school during the pandemic and every metric set to make sure they don't go back to school, criminal justice system with this social justice, no bail, letting criminals out again. And the left can also take credit for the invasion at the border and the illegal crime. I mean, I could just tick them all off. It doesn't matter at this point. They can do whatever they want at this point. The American people, I believe, think that, that understand the separation of powers and the three branches of government, and that what we've got is the Supreme Court that has the final say in all legal issues. Let them spend their money. Let them go crazy. It's not going to move anything. In fact, I think it's not as effective as it would have been a year ago because the public's had enough. But one thing, Dana, I'd like to just comment on one thing as it relates to the delay in the sentencing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, number one is that the people asked for a delay in the sentencing pending the court's decision, meaning Merchan, as to what impact the Supreme Court case has had. But the defense, Donald Trump's team, has asked for the ability to file a motion to vacate the jury's verdict. That's what we call in New York a 330 application. And so that you understand, so that the public understands, even though this is a state case, what is significant about this and may be totally impacted by the Supreme Court's decision is the fact that Juan Merchan allowed testimony in regarding official acts of the president. And so what are we talking about in this state prosecution? It's basically phone calls, it's witnesses in the Oval Office. It was Hope Hicks. It was Madeleine Westerhouse. It was a 2018 filing of his ethics report. And Trump, his team kept saying to Merchan, look, we just got certiorari from the Supreme Court.
Right.
Can we delay this trial until the Supreme Court decides? Now the whole thing's going to blow up.
Right.
It's got to be reversed based upon the use of official acts.
And you think of all those people that went through having to testify, they wouldn't have had to do it.
Yep.
All right. Joey, give you the last word.
Yeah, I think if this were reversed and it were a liberal or Democrat president that brought this to the Supreme Court with the same makeup, it would be like a 5-4 decision in favor of immunity. I really do believe that. I think that you can't take the lens of what's happening in the world today out of it, but it's not because 6 justices have allegiance to President Trump. It's because they can sit here and see what is lawfare. And they understand there needs to be a protection against it because that will be the way forward.
Tenure, tenure, sweeping, sweeping, blush, blush, dissent, dissent, unprecedented, unprecedented, hyperbole, hyperbole, prone, prone, rogue, rogue, charade, charade, judicious, judicious, turmoil, turmoil, construe, construe, cynical, cynical.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.